impressed that many of you chose in your essays last night. And so I would love to review all of them, but unfortunately we only have time for a few today. So I wanted to get into the feedback, and I also want to encourage you, if you have questions that I didn't answer yesterday, to type them in. One question I got was about are APs more important than SAT, ACT, since many people won't have those scores this year? And the answer to that is no. The AP exams have never been very important in the hierarchy of admissions and what is considered, and it is especially unimportant this year given all of the technical challenges that people faced with taking the exam online. Certainly if you had high AP scores, feel free to self-report those on the application, but don't feel like if you got a score that wasn't your best that you failed or that you have to say anything about it. You can just set it aside, and hopefully you did well enough in the class, since that's the more important grade between the AP score and the grade in the class. You definitely want to make sure you had a good grade in the class. So if any questions like that come up, feel free to type them in, and we should have a little time at the end to get to them. So I'm gonna take off my picture here, and I'm going to share with you a few essays that were provided to me. Again, I got many different ones, so I'm sorry if I don't get to yours, but feel free to follow up with us afterwards if you think you need some one-on-one guidance. So I'm going to share the essays, and you're going to have a chance to read along with me. For all the essays that had names on them, I blocked out the name so you don't know whose essay this is when you're going to read it. So I invite you to read along with me this essay, which looks like it was from a free write. So let's take a moment to read that, and then I'll give some comments on it. So I want to say, and hopefully you had a chance to read this over my shoulder, to whoever wrote this, it sounds like it's a great start of the essay that you're working on. I encourage you to continue thinking along the lines of your essay, because it sounds like, I get this sense already from your essay of the environment that you're taking me to. You're taking me to a scene of this mission trip, and it sounds like it was clearly an important and transformative experience for you. So I think you've chosen a great topic for this essay. As you look to revise this essay, I would suggest you go back to thinking about your goals for college. So why might this story be relevant to your college goals? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to mean, let's say, you talk about a mission trip, you have to study theology, nothing like that, but think about what character trait, what contribution you're going to show in the end in this essay. And this is clearly a good start for an essay. I'm not sure where it's going. So what might be helpful from here would be to outline the rest of the story points that you were thinking about before you finish out this story, because you want to think about what are the important details that someone would need to know to gain insight on the character traits and the contributions that you're trying to demonstrate in this essay. So there's probably a lot of information in the story, and not all of it necessarily needs to be displayed in the essay. So my sense is the first couple paragraphs, I absolutely love. I'm following along with you. Once we get to paragraph 3, I start to get a little bit lost about this wall and, what the significance of that is. So I think the transition between paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 was really easy for me to follow. Paragraph 2 to paragraph 3, not so easy. So is there more information that's needed? Is there, a line break? You could put 2 asterisks, for example, if you're going to go to a different part of the story and then build on that. So think about, again, the structure, I would say, from here, and the structure relevant to the final message that you want to share about yourself. Overall, I think this is a great start, and you've got the makings of an awesome essay here, so great job. So if you have any questions, again, like, feel free to share in the chat. I'm gonna just stop my share so I can move to the next essay because I had that on full screen mode. So here's the second essay. So this one was a little bit of a different prompt. I'm not sure what prompt the first person was referring to. Are you all seeing my screen, by the way? Can you see the essay when I'm sharing it? Maybe Brianna, you could give me a heads up.
Yeah, I can see it.
What do you want to major in and why?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so let's all read this together. So great job to whoever wrote this essay. I really appreciated how you walked us through some of your hesitations you had about entering the field you're planning to enter, and then your journey on that field. So really well done in terms of bringing me along with you to your story and helping me understand about your perspective a little bit more. I think what you could consider doing, there's a couple directions I think you could consider taking this in, and the direction will depend on if you plan on using this essay for a more school-specific essay versus a Common App essay. So we didn't talk about supplement essays on our chat yesterday. We talked just about the Common App essay. You will also have a school-specific essay in which you may be asked to talk more about your major and why you want to study in that major. So if you go in that direction, I think that this is a great tool to have for a foundation for your supplement essay, because you've got some personal information in there and you've got some of your pursuits that you've accomplished from your initial origin of your interest. What I think you could do to improve this essay, if you are going to use it for a supplement essay, would be to talk about your goals, your broader goals for studying computer science or engineering beyond what you've already managed to accomplish so far. So right now, I feel like I'm in the present, I'm following along your journey, which is really helpful to get to know you better. And I also want to know, what are your bigger dreams for the future? How do you want to impact the world? It sounds like this special education student is an example of one way you see that technology can help you enhance the world or enhance other people's lives. But think bigger, think beyond this one person. What are you ultimately hoping to accomplish through your computer science endeavors? And what are some other examples of related projects that you've participated in that have informed this interest? So it doesn't have to be, I've done these computer science projects, this informs my interest. Maybe there are other kinds of leadership roles you've taken on or other endeavors you've been part of that all contribute to this larger goal that you have. Maybe your goal is to improve accessibility or something, learning accessibility through technology. And maybe there are other ways that you've improved learning accessibility beyond the technical part. Maybe you tutor or you help orient new students to school. I don't know what else you do outside this essay, but I'm just taking some guesses and making up some hypotheticals for you so you could think through your repertoire of things that you've already worked on and what else might relate to technology. So that would be one direction to go in with this. If you're looking for supplement essay, if you're doing the Common App essay, you might consider the story about the special education student and what that experience taught you about yourself and how you applied it to not only your technology pursuits, but also in other endeavors. And then from there, how does that inspire your goals? So that's another way to take this content and expand upon it so that people can get to know that side of you and what it was like for you working with that person and what it was like to develop that and what was really driving you in this kind of scenario. So if that feels relevant, salient, important, you could choose to expand on this buddy story with Austin for the common application essay. So lots of great content here. Thank you so much for sharing. I've got one more example to share, and I'm going to pull that one up now. Okay. So we'll read along together. So thank you to whoever shared this for sharing a personal story. This does sound like it was a really difficult experience. It's obviously stayed with you through the years, and being in the hospital for 5 days is really hard on top of what you went through. So I want to acknowledge the difficulty that you have here, and this, by the way, I read the other essays that came through. This advice and feedback applies to some other essays that came through. So when we have a painful or difficult experience, it's natural to want to talk about it and sort of ruminate on it and repeat all the different details about it. With the college essay, what you ideally want to do is you take an experience like this and you expand upon it to underscore your learning and how it informs your goals and what kinds of things you want to do with your life and with your schooling. So when we have a story like this, it's definitely captured my interest. Whoever wrote it very well. I was engaged the entire time I was reading it. I was not bored at all, but I kept waiting for sort of what is the learning, what is the outcome, and towards the end, there was some learning about eating healthy and not taking difficulties seriously that may not be so difficult. But the learning was very generalized and truncated at the end versus being a larger part of the story. So my suggestion would be, if you're going to use this story, would be to find a way to condense it and create more relevance to it for today. So you can think about, well, what actions did you take because of this incident? So what did it inspire you to, let's say, take on a certain leadership role if you're doing health related work? Let's say, for example, did it inspire you to take on health related projects? Did it inspire you to use engineering to create a better hospital experience for people? I don't know. I'm not sure what this experience inspired you to do. I have a sense generally that it shaped your character in some way, but I want to know what that looks like in practice. And so if I'm going to think about this essay as, percentages, I want 25% of the essay to be this story, and I want 75% of the essay to be about how you implemented the learning. And now what? And so what is the significance of this learning for you today? So again, very easy to get mired in the details of these really difficult experiences we have. I think it's really a great exercise to write them out and share them selectively with people. But for this essay, you want to, again, show how these experiences are shaping you and helping you to become the best student, the best professional you could be in the future, not necessarily just a way to kind of vent out the challenges that we had. So keep that in mind for the future, but in terms of writing, you're doing a great job. I would give you also similar advice to the first essay where you could outline, the story and think about how you could share the most important details more quickly, and then think about what are the takeaways from that you can create some specificity around other than generally teaching you to be healthier and to not take difficulties too seriously. So thank you to the 3 who shared and to the many others who provided essays. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your time writing. So I'm going to give you a few more tips, and again, I welcome any questions you might have, and we can take those at the end. So just general tips for everybody, which I gave as feedback in part of my review. So think about your essay, like what is the main point? Why are we reading this? So we're all complicated, so are our stories, right? So in all 3 stories, the writers shared something very meaningful and personal to them. And there are so many aspects we could choose to talk about in an essay. But what is this essay? What we want to ask ourselves when we're writing these things and we're refining them is like, what is this essay really about? Could you summarize why someone will read your essay in 1 to 2 sentences? Well, not why as in why they will care, but summarize the main point. What is the reader supposed to take away from this story? So can you go back on your essays and do that? Can you summarize what the point is of the essay? And if you have trouble doing that, then that points to a structural issue in the essay, that you have to think about what is this essay really about, and then what content will support my main idea of the essay. And then I would say generally keep the story small. I think in the 3rd essay, that was a great example of a small moment that can be expanded out into other directions to help the reader see its current relevance. So you want to know what you're trying to say before you say it, rather than write out a lot of drafts of the same or similar versions of essays. And if that's part of your creative process, like power to you, but in terms of getting the final essay done, this is kind of the best way to think about it, because then you can boil it down to exactly what you want to say before you go through the painstaking process of writing out the words and figuring out what words to say. This is another tool. It doesn't apply to all essays, but it can apply to your topic ideation, the way you're thinking about a topic. And it can apply to, like in the example of the major essay, it can apply really well to that kind of essay where you have something concrete and specific to talk about. The essay outline format is STAR and then learning. So situation, task, action, result is what STAR is. So situation is just the general context. What would someone need to know to understand the story that you're presenting? Task, what was the challenge that needed to be solved in this problem? Action, what did you decide to do in order to solve the problem, or in order to overcome the challenge, and any information you may have about methods. And then result, what happened and what did you learn as a result of this situation? So this is a nice way, if you, let's say, go back, write the main idea, then what will the STAR outline fit? Does the reader need to know all these pieces? And for some essays, this will be very helpful. And for all essays, it can be just an initial brainstorming tool in a way to make sure you have the right details on the page. So you can also, I would go back and outline the essay. So this is like an example of an outline where this is a sample prompt from Common App. When did you challenge belief or idea? Would you make that decision again? So this person wrote about experience visiting the elderly, and then what they learned: persistence is needed, revolution starts with a small flame, and I would make the same decision again. So think about once you write out what your main idea is, you can actually just outline paragraph by paragraph. You can use STAR to inform that. If that's not a relevant framework for you, you can just use paragraph outlines. And so that's the basic information about what you need to know to create your Common App essay. Thank you for having me. I'd love to spend a little time taking any additional questions that you may have about the college process or about essays. So someone asked me about privately about their essay. I think that all three essays have the makings of great college application essays. So I think if you can take my feedback and improve upon it, then it'll be in even better shape. I'd also invite you, if you are looking for one-on-one consulting for a college application process, I'd invite you to send me an email to my email, which is up here, info@ivyinsight.com, and let me know where you are in the process, and we can explore and see if it makes sense for us to work together more closely on your essays and your college applications at large. In what ways will colleges change their admissions process due to the pandemic? So I actually have some articles in Forbes about this that I invite you to take a look. I will, so if you go to Forbes.com and you just look up my name, Aviva Leggett, and I'll type my name in again before the end so you can look me up, then you can see some of the predictions I've made about college admissions and the pandemic. I would say generally, in terms of the process of applying, nothing has changed right now in terms of the process of applying. As many of you know, SAT, ACT have been dropped by virtually all colleges for this upcoming year. So that's a big change. But what doesn't change is that the academics, the transcript is the most important aspect of the process. In terms of the process itself, there's now space to talk about any impacts of COVID-19 on your application process. So that prompt will likely be available in future years. Hopefully will be the pandemic will not go on for very much longer, and it will just impact perhaps a year, 6 months of our trajectory, but it could impact longer. So we, just think about your life, and I would recommend you keep a journal and document, excuse me, I might sneeze, document what's happening in your life. I guess anybody can see this on a presentation, right? Document what's happening in your life personally and extracurricularly so that you can go back and reflect on what happened. In terms of what you actually want to write in that COVID-19 box, if you have experienced adversity beyond the norm in your school and community environment, you should definitely write about that. If you've experienced what many have experienced, and not undermining it, but just saying it's very common for you to be, learning virtually or to have extracurriculars canceled. Yes, that's important, but it's not necessarily an extenuating circumstance of COVID-19 beyond what others may have experienced. Someone asked, if someone gets a grade semester one, and raises a grade by semester one, like a B to an A, how much do colleges take semester one into consideration? It's a smaller consideration than the final grade, but they would still see, the B. If it's just one B on a transcript of all A's, I wouldn't worry about that unless it's a B that is in a subject that you are planning to major in which case it could make a difference in the kind of strategy you would pick. So you might be, because you're an engineer, I'm making an assumption you're really good at math. And so if you're not getting, A's in math or really high grades in math, then that may not be the best for your candidacy. But if it's in a subject like English or physical education or something that's not as relevant to an engineering path, then it won't be the B won't be as important as if it's in a subject that's relevant to your major. Great. Any more? Oh, okay. Do colleges care about small differences such as 790 on Math 2 versus 800? It's a small difference. On the Math 2, many people do break 800 in the engineering related fields, but it's not going to make or break your application if all the other components are in place. And if you're applying this year, then you don't even have to send your scores, although I would send in a 790 because I think that's a really high score. How do you stand out on your college essay? I hope that I've given you a lot of information about that, but for me, it's having an authentic voice, the right story to resonate with your audience, and to have a story that is meaningful for your future. So that's what I would say. And I would encourage you to get a team, behind you, whether that's an independent consultant like myself, teachers, parents, people who can support you through this process, because it is a very daunting process and you're going to need feedback. So I would not send anything into a college application unless it's reviewed by somebody who has had experience with this process before. Because it's one thing to think that something you wrote sounds good. It's another thing to know if it's actually going to make an impact to the other person, because we're not all following you and in your mind, right? We are separately evaluating your experiences, devoid of your own experience in that experience. Can I briefly say why the Costco essay was so successful? Sure. So it was successful because it was a very unique way to talk about her different interests. So she used this kind of metaphor of going down the aisles and picking out the different things. And she used that as a powerful metaphor. And she was also able to show how that experience applied to her choices. So she was able to show that in an engaging manner. So I would say check out that article in Business Insider that I referenced yesterday. You can search it by Business Insider and my name, or Business Insider and Brittany Stinson. And you can see why we thought it was a good essay. Not a perfect essay, but a really good essay. Someone got B's in their freshman year art. Will that affect them if they're going to major in engineering? No, that's not a big deal unless you were applying to a design field. I wouldn't worry too much about that, especially because it was in freshman year. Well, thank you very much for having me, BlueStamp team, Brianna, Jesse. I encourage you to stay in touch. My info is up here, info@ivyinsight.com. If you want to chat, if you have any other questions, feel free to send an email. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck on your program, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your essays with me.
Thanks so much for coming, Dr. Aviva. Students, thanks for being here and for all your good questions. So we'll see you later. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.